one comment taken out of context by someone who, by the sound of things, had a vendetta over something so small, changed the trajectory of your life, because you then obviously brought on someone else to try and bring the business back up to fruition and back where it was. You brought on a new CEO. You were effectively ousted from your own company. How on earth does someone manage to deal with that? Because if we look at how you were feeling at that point in time, from being at the heights, driving around in amazing cars, living an amazing lifestyle, great income, to almost overnight, well, pretty much overnight, it all changing. How did you feel at that point in time? Because you've come a huge way now to be able to deal with it and more so talk about it.
Yeah, I can deal with it. I can talk about it. But I mean, if you were interviewing my wife, she would still be very bitter and
Yeah.
say that was the day that changed our lives and changed Gerald, and he wasn't the same person after that. That's she feels, that she can't forget it, and she is bitter about it. And that's not in my nature. I don't want to spend my life. You only have one life. You don't want to spend every day of it cursing yourself, and you just make the most of it. And if you take into account my life compared to most people's lives, I have to say it's been pretty good. I haven't been short of, well, I was short of money afterwards because I lost everything. The
Yeah.
shares went to 2p and I had enormous debt. But without taking those 7 years out, before and after, I've been okay. I lost the business that I want, I loved and I built, but I've had lots of other excitement and enjoyment in my life. But at that time, you asked me how I dealt with it, how I felt. I didn't deal with it very well. I basically gave up, and I joke about this in the speech that I spent 7 years in bed watching Countdown, and I didn't really want to play anymore. And I believed everything that was said of about me in the press. And the strange thing was, when I finally got out of bed and I started meeting people, like when I did my speeches or when I opened up my health club, everyone wasn't anything like what I expected. They were very friendly and supportive and not critical.
Yeah.
So I'd got a completely false view of how everybody felt about me. But
And I think a lot of people will relate to that as well. One thing happens, and yours was on a grand scale because you were well known and you were in an industry where, bad news travels much faster than good news. But there will be people who've undoubtedly had something happens in their life that, in the grand scheme of things, in comparison to that, is so small and minuscule, but we blow it up out of all proportion. So you had this viewpoint at that point in time that, everyone was talking about you. There was all of this negativity. And during those 7 years, you joke about it, you stayed at home and watched Countdown, but you actually did remove yourself from pretty much everything and everyone. Having read your book, and by the way, I would absolutely recommend, I know you've written a couple of books, but I would absolutely recommend everyone read Rise, Fall and Rise Again, because that book is phenomenal and showcases, the highs and lows of your journey. But through there, you talk a lot about cycling and how that helped you as a result.
yeah, well, I was definitely, people talk about young kids being depressed and anxious and all that sort of stuff for no reason. Well, I don't know what reasons they have, but it is a fact that if you don't have any money and things are really disastrous in your life and you've really lost something, albeit nobody had died, but it felt like that to me. You will suffer. You will feel depressed. It's completely natural to feel depressed, and I was in a really bad place and went and tried to get some help, and I was prescribed Prozac or the Ciroxat, which is the same thing. And that really had a detrimental effect on my life because and I'm not criticizing other people for taking it. It might work for other people, maybe where they've lost somebody or whatever, because it does make you does take away a lot of anxiety and it calms you down. But in my case, just when I needed to get back on my feet, it made me satisfied with doing nothing and just giving up and and I didn't even talk. People, I remember once we went out for dinner and somebody said, well, I'm fair, I'm sitting opposite Gerald, he doesn't speak. Because I didn't. When I was taking these pills, I completely went into my shell. And I had no chance of using my ability to get back on my feet. I was just going to be in limbo there. So I realized that, and I stopped taking the pills. But my wife insisted that I get out of the house, which was strange because my first wife always complained that I was always out of the house. But anyway, I then sort of, just to kill time, I was cycling, and I still had this bike, which was a fabulous road bike, carbon fiber. And I started cycling every day all over the place. And I was beginning to feel good, about myself. I was not taking the pills anymore. And I still do this to this day, 25 miles a day, because even though my life is back on track, we all have bad days, whoever we are. And it does deal with that. It cheers you up, albeit temporarily, but it does turn a bad day into a good day. So, I mean, everyone knows that exercise is good for mental health, but they didn't really then, back in the 90s, so much. So yeah, it was the cycling, and also, what also you get when you're exercising, especially cycling, I don't know why, but is you get your best ideas. You think clearly. You're not under pressure.